Awesome. Well, thank you, Marty. Thank you to everyone for joining us. I hope you're all staying safe and healthy. We're certainly living through unprecedented times. You know, the past few months have been trying, to say the least. The world feels uncertain and unsure as we think about how long before our lives return back to normal, whatever that normal might be. But even in this moment of darkness where we as a species experience so much uncertainty, tragedy, and grief, there seems to be countless moments of light, moments of hope and humanity. And I want to take the time I have today to share some of those stories. Share stories of how people in my community and around the world are acting with a sense of purpose, showing compassion and connection, and along the way, rediscovering some of those social ties they have with their local communities and their environments. A little about me. I'm Janani. I'm talking to you guys from Portland, Oregon. I work in design innovation, helping organizations understand their customers, who they are, what they do, what they desire, the problems they face, and interpret some of those insights into design solutions, both in the physical and the digital realm. So most of the time, my work takes me to that intersection between people and their digital and physical environments. And really, it's about figuring out how to seamlessly integrate those two different lives so their experiences at home, their workplaces, their retail environments, and ultimately their urban environments can be more meaningful and a little bit more empowering to all of them. Let's get right to it. I want to spend a few minutes before talking about community, just going through how living life through a pandemic is unlike other crises we've experienced as a modern society. You know, our planet has gone through crises before. Humanity has seen much devastation. Take 9/11 as an example of a catastrophe in modern America. If 9/11 was like an earthquake that showed no signs before tragedy struck, the current crisis almost feels like a tsunami that hit the beach, you know, when we were just out lounging, sipping our cocktails. We could see it coming from a distance. It was affecting other parts of the world, but somehow we felt invincible. And after 9/11, you know, our lives changed suddenly, unexpectedly, but the evidence of the destruction, the evidence of the tragedy was there for everyone to see. It was a horrible reminder of what had happened. This time around, things seem to be different. We're dealing with an enemy that is invisible, and that's what makes this so surreal and disorienting for a lot of us. Even when you look at the cities that have been most affected by the pandemic, there's really no sign to the outside world. There's a lot of death and destruction and devastation that's happening, but most of it is behind closed doors. So it seems to be almost invisible to a majority of us. So the destruction in this case is almost the overwhelming absence of life. There's empty streets, empty shopping centers, empty subways, tourist spots are empty, and eerie stadiums where, you know, there's no fans. And so, since the threat, which is undeniably dangerous, is invisible, we're pressed to do the opposite of what we as human beings tend to do in a tragedy or crisis. What we've done historically to show our solidarity, to show our collective fever of purpose and determination, is come out of our houses. We march the streets to show our unity and support. We build community by being around the same people that want the same things as us. But sadly, you know, this time around, we can't do any of that. And that's for our own safety. We must express our unity and isolation and solidarity in isolation. And so as a result, we cannot experience any of that excitement that's typically associated with community building endeavors. So the best thing we can do right now is disappear into the great indoors. And when you think about it, you know, this form of solidarity that is being asked of us at this time is totally in sync with our times. You know, we're being encouraged to retreat deeper into our technologies and into our devices. And that should be easy for us, right? I mean, we started social distancing way before the coronavirus forced us to socially distance. In fact, many of us would argue that our devices had already stripped so many of us of real connection and community. So, as a design researcher that studies people's relationships with technology, I was very interested in understanding how that the next couple months would unfold. Would people use tech and social media differently now that it's their only link to the outside world? And how does that affect the relationship or the dynamic between people and their devices? Tech has had such a profound impact on how we as a species express ourselves, communicate, connect with each other. And thanks to tech, we're hyper connected. We're able to participate in global communities from work to social settings. And naturally, it is, and it will be undoubtedly core to how we stay socially connected at this time. And just look at all the new fascinating ways in which people are using tech and digital tools to stay engaged and informed and connected at this time. I mean, we're creating new types of content, expressing ourselves in such creative ways, sharing life experiences, experimenting with all kinds of socially distanced gatherings, from virtual dance parties and exercise classes to happy hours and movie nights, and even cloud clubbing apparently is a thing. And in one case, which is my favorite, a drone delivery of flowers to a loved one that apparently was socially distancing. So tech is being used in such creative ways at this time for people to stay engaged and connected. But there's also something else, which is so wonderful and fascinating. We're still finding ways to show our collective fever and determination in the physical world. This, in my mind, ties back to how people experience their digital and physical realities. I mean, there's people performing in balconies for other people to see and hear. They're putting up signs to show their unity in their front yards. There's flash mobs making some noise for caregivers all around the world. And this shows that no matter how far we go in the world, digitally, we as human beings are always going to want that sense of connection to place. We're undeniably physical beings. We have to exist in a place. So we're looking for a sense of connection to place and the community and the familiarity and the belonging that come with it. And the connection that I'm talking about is not something that comes from performing on a digital stage with thousands of followers or living your life in a glass box, but these are strong, powerful bonds that are forged when we reconnect with something that is as tangible as our physical spaces and our local communities. So ultimately, in an ephemeral world of digital content, place satisfies the yearning to ground ourselves. So, what are people doing? How are people finding social comfort in the physical realm when they socially distance? As I've discovered in my early morning runs, anything goes, right? I haven't come across a jazz performance yet, but I run into so many positive, uplifting messages in people's front yards, windows. Some have turned on their holiday lights to express their solidarity, to send a message that we're all in this together, we're going through similar things. Bear hunting is a popular pastime in my family and others with younger children. Participating in shared activities like this sort of helps create and help you feel a greater sense of community. A few other examples: sidewalk art is popping up everywhere. People are chalking up sidewalks and driveways with positive vibes. In my neighborhood, I come across, these arrows that lead me to inspiring notes, kind of like a scavenger hunt, which is a great thing to do with kids. And speaking of kids, they have been coming up with sort of innovative ways to stay connected while still being playful, leaving handwritten notes in each other's front yards, spotted birthday notes. And so these notes are a great way for everyone to feel grounded and connected when they can't see each other. My 70-year-old neighbor leaves me notes on my windows for my 4-year-old to see. And these messages are living and breathing. She changes them out every so often, adds fresh cut spring flowers to them every so often. And these little gestures of recognition, personal notes written with compassion, have certainly added a tinge of magic and surprise and serendipity to my quarantine days. Community projects are also popping up in my neighborhood. This one's my favorite. It's a poetry tree that invites people to post poems and share inspiring stories. And I stop by it every day to give it a read. And the last time I was there, this whole tree was filled up with poems. So these are certainly, sort of bright spots in my morning. And simple projects like this sort of help build that unity and solidarity, put us in a better frame of mind. No tech needed. It's just people kind of designing their physical spaces to express their resilience and finding ways to inspire and support one another and lift each other up. Besides, sending positive vibes in times of crises, people really do step up. Communities band together, they step up to volunteer, organize, and strategize how to immediately help those who need it the most. We hear stories of pure acts of kindness of people and groups delivering free groceries, landlords canceling rent for tenants and checking in on, the vulnerable sections of the community like seniors. And despite sort of this devastating impact on the economy, we're seeing a lot of companies acting like first responders, helping with urgent community needs and working for the collective good. Studies have shown that having a sense of purpose and giving support to others has a significant impact on our well-being, especially in times like these when we're all going through similar struggles. Even if it's, putting up a jazz performance or leading a group workout, from your balcony, that gives you a sense of purpose in these times. I think this quote nicely summarizes what I kind of take away from these stories, which is that social distancing, and Alicia made this point too, which is that social distancing is highlighting the importance of social connection and what happens when this part of who we are is taken away. And what I take away from this is no matter how digitally connected we are to the outside world, we will still seek out human connections, ones that exist in the real world. And they tell me that we cannot replace human interaction with pure digital connection. And also, in many ways, this crisis is forcing us to rethink our relationships with our built environments, our communities. We're looking up from our phones when we're out in the street, and it's reintroducing us to our local communities. And perhaps in some ways, it's offering a chance to pause, to think about who we are as people, how we want to live, and what matters to us. And ultimately, reset our relationships with technology and social media in particular. The second important thing that these stories show us is that out of all this tragedy and grief, something extraordinary is emerging. We're becoming kinder, a more altruistic community, and crisis is bringing the best in all of us. And as we find our routines sort of going out the door and our lives are filled with uncertainty, we're being forced to change. We're becoming more cooperative. We're having a deeper regard for one another, acting with ingenuity and kindness. There's always going to, be those naysayers and those panicky hoarders. But for every one of those, we have thousands of people who are supporting each other and helping prevent the spread of the virus. And even seeing people pull together on the internet to connect, to share information and share resources, coming up with solutions is a healthier version of the digital culture, which you'd only seen in commercials before. So in some ways, we're finding the humanity in us again, and that's a liberating thought. This is a powerful quote, and I'm going to read it for you guys. We can choose to walk through it dragging the carcasses of our prejudice and hatred, our avarice, our databanks and dead ideas, our dead rivers and smoky skies behind us. Or we can walk through lightly with little luggage, ready to imagine another world and ready to fight for it. Nothing is certain today, but as I read the other day, distancing ourselves today will allow us to embrace each other more warmly tomorrow. We're opening up to an awareness of dependence, of community, of solidarity, and we may be physically withdrawing from each other, but that's only making us appreciate all the things we had until so recently. Being around the ones you love, holding their hands, giving them a hug, a picnic in the park or a drink, at the bar, or even the sound of kids in the playground. So if I can leave today, with something for us all to think about, it is this. We all have the time now to reconnect with ourselves, to focus on things we did not have the time to focus on before, to rediscover the wealth in our homes, wealth in our communities, to practice random acts of kindness, to better support our local businesses, and rather than texting, picking up the phone to call. Because in the midst of all this chaos, there's also opportunity to build stronger and more resilient communities. Thank you.